Members, it's the appointed time, and we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting. Agenda item number 1, information paper issued since the last meeting. After the last meeting, there is one paper that's been issued, which has been tabled. Now we move on to the next item, that is Capital Works Reserve Fund block allocations for 2024 to 2025. Would government officials please enter the room? As this item involves funding proposal, would members please note that in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedures, if you would like to speak on the items in which you have direct or indirect pecuniary interest, please disclose the nature of your interest before you speak. If you would like to put questions, you may press the button now. Welcome government officials for attending the meeting. As there are quite a number of items involved, so we have quite a number of government officials attending the meeting today. I would like to remind members, as there are 2 agenda items today proposed by the government, the meeting will last 2 hours. We hope that the meeting can end at 10:30 a.m. We will try to be strict with time. When we have time available, I will allow for a second round. There are 2 members who have pressed the button to speak. Well, 3 of them. I will allow 4 minutes for each member, including question and answer. Mr. Chen. I would like to ask about Head 701, Subhead 1004CA, about the project at Yunnan Road that accounts for about $1.7 million. I think that we should widen the road at South Lantau Road in Lantau Island. That is the roadworks at South Lantau Road and Hoi Sha Path, Chensha, Lantau Island. When there was landslides, the entire road was blocked. Have you considered widening South Lantau Road to facilitate commute of residents? I would like to ask about Head 703. I see that the stargazing facilities will be improved. Can you talk about what kind of stargazing facilities will be installed at the peak? Because we have a much light pollution at the peak. How do we look at stars there? Thank you. Which member will take the question? On the first question, I will invite the Highways Department. About the second question, I will invite the RHSD to take that. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. About the South Lantau Road, I understand the concern. We've been having slope improvement work there. We work together with the CEDD on that. We note the concern. I don't have the latest information at hand. Perhaps I have to go back and talk to my colleagues about that. Thank you. Mr. Pang, who will take the question? Mr. Chin. On construction of stargazing facilities at the peak, the facilities will be at 36 Austin Road. that's located at the former quarters of RTHK. We will renovate and redevelop the facilities to turn it into a stargazing facilities. The building is located at 520 MPD, which is situated at a rather high location that provides a good environment for stargazing activities. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I have a follow-up question. It's the first time that I hear that we can do stargazing at the peak. We have such serious light pollution in the urban area. We have to go to a remote area at new territories in order for us to do stargazing. Will anyone make use of their stargazing facilities at the peak? Who will take the question? Mr. Chen? As the project proponent is LCSD, LCSD has conducted some study, and they think that the location at the peak, that is the Mount Austin Road, is appropriate for people to stargaze. Do you need the government to provide supplementary information? I think that we need, because it cost $45 million. Who have you consulted such that you think that is an appropriate location? I hope that the government can provide relevant documents. Perhaps we will talk to the LCSD and provide a supplementary information after the meeting. Thank you. Next, Ms. Chen Yutming. Thank you, Chairman. I support the Capital Works Reserve Fund block allocations on land resumption and drainage services. There is an increase in terms of funding allocation. In terms of drainage services, I understand that the government is trying to improve the relevant services in new territories. I would like the government to talk about the improvement works on drainage services in new territories. Are you catching up in terms of progress? It's mentioned in the policy address that the mobile signals in the new territories will be improved. When I was canvassing for electors to vote in the new territories, I find out that a resident's phone signal was rather weak. In the policy address, it says that the 5G signals will be improved in new territories. Is there any such project involving improvement of data in the funding allocation? It's mentioned in the Northern Metropolis Action Agenda that you will provide for 4 major areas. And yesterday, there was a blueprint that's been promulgated in terms of transport. Can the government talk about the construction works in the new territories, as this item will be submitted to the PWSC for scrutiny? I hope that the government can provide a document on the works in relation to the Northern Metropolis. Thank you. Who will take the question? Chairman, in relation to the first question, perhaps I invite the DSD to talk about that. In terms of signals, about A00GX, we have another panel for consultation, that is the ITBP, but we are happy to refer your questions to relevant departments for follow-up. For Northern Metropolis, we have invited representatives from the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office. So he will take the question. Who will take the question? Let me answer it. On sewage collection in new territories until June 2023, .500 villages will be covered for 270 of them, the works have been completed. About 17,000 village houses have already installed sewage treatment facilities. For 50 villages, the sewage collection facilities have already been installed. For the villages that have not been covered under the scheme, they are far away from sewage collection facilities, and perhaps there are very few residents in the villages. So when we are planning for the sewage treatment facilities in the new territories, there are some villagers who have questions in relation to the coverage and the design of the facilities, so we faced some difficulties in terms of installation. Until June 2020 in Shatin, Taipo, Saikong, New Territories North, we have installed sewage treatment facilities there, covering about 96% approximately of the villages. Most villagers want sewage treatment facilities there. We are currently planning and designing relevant facilities, and when we are about to complete the design, we will consult the villagers and the representatives of the rural communities, and in due course we will apply for funding allocation. Thank you. Mr. Yun from the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office. Thank you, Chairman. On the 30th of October this year, the government promulgated the Northern Metropolis Action Agenda. 4 major zones are proposed. In the Action Agenda, we lay out the development focus for each of the major zones. As for supplementary information in relation to the funding allocation for Capital Works Reserve, we can provide that after the meeting. Thank you, Chairman. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions. First, sub 701, Annex 2B. Compared 2023 to 24 and 2024 to 25, the 2 items. If we talk about 2023 to 24, there are about 160 ongoing projects that involves $96 million. But for 2024 to 25, the ongoing project account to about 150. So there are 10 less projects, but the expenditure is 34075. Sorry, it was not $98 million. I just want to ask about the details. We're not comparing apples with oranges. I would like to ask about the 160 projects in 2024 to 25, or 2023 to 25. How many have been completed and how many will be carried over to 2024 to 25? And among the 150 projects, how many of them are new? Because we have quite a discrepancy. Because there is no details provided in the paper, I would like to ask why there is such a discrepancy. In 2023 to 24, there were about $980 million. For 2024 to 25, that's about $30 million. Will the Highways Department take that?
Excuse me, it's Lands Department. Ms. Leung. In 1100CA, there are 2 tables, one table 1, the other table 2, that is part 1, part 2. So part 2 are the proposed new items, the part 1 are the ongoing key items. Some items are not listed here. So the member asked why the amount is much higher for 2024 to 25. It is because land acquisition of most projects will be undertaken during that year. For example, for the Kutung North and the Fanling North development areas. That's why the amount is much bigger, Mr. Lam. So I understand that this difference is caused by the land acquisition cost. It does not involve changes or significant changes with other costs. Well, in fact, for 701, most of them are related to land acquisition because land acquisition is required for new development areas. That's why the cost is higher. I have a follow-up, Chair. Now, the compensation for land acquisition, as I understand, the standards are now lower. In fact, I want to ask if the estimates reflect that the lowered costs. Well, it is not fully reflected at the moment. In fact, in April and October, the amounts will be gazetted. The amounts we have here follow the figures in October. I do have a second question, but perhaps I'll ask that in the second round. I want to know more about the amount. You said the amount is related to the higher costs of land acquisition. I remember it being asked last year, in fact, in page 5 of the paper, the Central Wan Chai bypass. $19.3 billion or $193 million will be needed. Why is it different? Is it because you need to deal with the leases involved? The project has been completed, as you know, Chair, but the owners or people affected have lodged claims. We are liaising with their representatives on the amount of compensation. We will try to complete the process as soon as possible. I believe the Secretary for Development said there should be a review of expediting the disbursement of compensation, or at least part of the compensation. That's why there have been complaints that the government is holding off the money and people cannot earn interest on them. With $30 billion, you are holding the $30 billion, but then you end up only releasing only hundreds of thousands. This is not ideal for the people affected. I think this has been reflected by members before as well. So since you have already acquired the land, you should disburse the compensation as soon as possible, at least part of the compensation to the people affected. Next, Ms. Dory Lee. Sure. The Capital Work Reserve Fund block allocations, I do support the initiative as we need funds for works to be completed. I am especially concerned about drainage works. There have been much drainage issues in Wong Tai Sin. As you remember, during the rainstorms, there has been significant flooding in Wong Tai Sin. I have talked to colleagues of the Development Bureau, and I was made aware that there is a plan to improve the drainage system in Wong Tai Sin. In fact, a while ago, I understand that there was another main burst. And in the same month, 2 weeks later, there were 3 cases of main bursts in Wong Tai Sin. When I visited the site, I realized that the roads had to be blocked and public transport have been affected. As you know, there is much traffic congestion in Kowloon East. So I want to ask if the administration can implement some temporary works to improve, even temporarily, the drainage system. I can see that there is an aging population for the older districts. For districts with more elderly persons, there should be more universal accessibility facilities. Will you accord priority to these districts when you allocate the funds? Thank you. Ms. Xia, please. Will have the DSD representative answer the first question in relation to the Universal Accessibility Program, UAP. It is to be discussed at a panel on transport. We are more than willing to convey your views to the relevant colleagues, however. Thank you. Mr. Cho, please. After the rainstorm in September, we have reviewed the priorities for drainage works to be undertaken in Wong Tai Sin. There will be major works undertaken to improve the system there. As for whether there are minor works that can be done to improve the drainage system, we have deployed officers to monitor the situation in different districts. We will implement minor works if necessary as soon as possible. Chair, I think the answer they gave is quite vague. Will they expedite the work since there are already 3 cases of main bursts in the same month? Will you have to ask for more funding in future should you need to conduct works for Wong Tai Sin? And in fact, it's not just Wong Tai Sin, it's just that I know more about the Wong Tai Sin situation. I want to ask if the funding would cover emergency works to be undertaken. Thank you. For the major works, we will seek funding from the Legislative Council. Can you expedite that? Well, of course we will. We will, of course, do that as soon as possible and report our progress to the members of the council. For 4100DX, we can conduct minor works under that subhead. As for the Universal Accessibility Program, you said my views would be conveyed to the colleagues that are to attend panel on transport meetings. Is it also the case that I can talk to you after the meeting? Well, in fact, we have a colleague from the Highways Department here. He or she can provide a brief response on this. Who is it going to be? Mr. Pang. Thank you. The UAP's aim is to provide barrier-free facilities for infrastructure to facilitate PWDs and elderly persons. Since 2011, that is its implementation, we have adopted various criteria to select sites where lifts have to be retrofitted. And these facilities will facilitate elderly persons and PWDs and so on to improve the access. After we have selected a potential site, we will consult district councils. And district councillors may be able to convey to us that there are more elderly persons living in the district. Mr. Pang, in fact, we all support the UAP, but members' concerns are that the progress is slightly slow with the implementation of the program having been 10 odd years since it has been implemented. For lifts that have to be retrofitted, as we can now use prefabricated lifts, I believe progress can be expedited, and perhaps you can install more universal access facilities in different sites. Chair, I would agree with what you said. I think they not only do they have to expedite the progress, but they should install more such facilities. Thank you. Ms. Doreen Kong, please. Thank you. I am concerned about the landslide prevention and mitigation program. I can see that the increase in the funding would be 24.95%, and there are many new projects. We have been implementing the program for quite some time. Why is there a significant increase in this year in particular? Have you adopted innovative technologies to attempt to lower the costs? I am also concerned about the new administrative computer systems. I can see that the funding will increase by approximately 15%. Can the administration explain why the funding has to be increased 15% in this year in particular? Thank you, Ms. Margaret Shaw. I'll let the CEDD representative answer the first part of the question regarding new administrative computer systems. As I said earlier, as per our usual practice, this is consulted in relation to this item. We've consulted the panel on information technology and broadcasting. We can perhaps provide a written reply after the meeting. We'll have Mr. Ma answer the first part of the question. Thank you, Ms. Doreen Kong, for your question. In relation to 501X, for the landslide prevention and mitigation program, we have been working on that for years. Every year we'll improve 150 slopes, and we will also conduct studies in relation to private slopes. We will also conduct risk management works for certain slopes. In 2023, we have 500 landslide cases. In relation to man-made slopes and natural slopes, we have been conducting reinforcement and rehabilitation works. For 5001BX, for example, we have increased $15 million in funding. We hope to increase the funding by 25% to cover emergency works to be undertaken. Any follow-up, Ms. Doreen Koch? Chair, concern is that landslide is not new to us. If you're saying that whenever there are major rainstorms or major storms, we'll have to spend more on the program, how can you explain that? Why is it necessary since the program has been implemented for such a long time? For the landslide prevention and mitigation program, are there any policies in place so that we can undertake the program in a systematic manner and make sure the costs are lowered? Thank you, Ms. Doreen Kong. The reason why funding has to be increased is that in 2023, the weather conditions were worse than ever. That's why we had to carry out much emergency maintenance works. That's why we had to increase the funding in the next year. We have an established mechanism, a risk-based mechanism for the landslide prevention and mitigation program. Under the program, mitigation works will be carried out for the relevant slopes. Thank you.
Next, Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Chairman. For the 2023 to 24 allocation, we have $150 billion in reserve, but the amount committed is about $600 billion. According to the government's forecast, in the upcoming 5 years, the non-recurrent expenditure exceed about $100 billion. The land sale revenue accounts to major part of our revenue. There are some failures of tenders in terms of sale of land. The revenue amounts to about $15.6 billion. That is about 20% of our expected income. We will be reclaiming land and committing other projects, so we have to diversify our sources of income. For land resumption or acquisition, for NXE 701 from 2024 to 25, the land acquisition cost stands at about $34 billion. In 2020, compared to 2023 to 24, there's an increase of about 2.4% or 2.4 times. I would like to ask about the land compensation fund that will be paid under the Northern Metropolis. For Kutong North, Fanlin North, we have to pay $16 billion. That accounts to about $70 billion in total. We have to pay $70 billion in terms of land resumption or acquisition. We need $1,000 billion in terms of commitment for developing the Northern Metropolis. Has the government estimated the total cost of Northern Metropolis? And the policy address says that we will have a committee on financing of major projects. What about the financing for Northern Metropolis? There are some people who talked about securitization, the public-private partnership. Can we issue bonds to potential immigrants so that they can become part of Hong Kong? I would like to ask about paragraph 12 of the paper, 00HX under subhead B1, an addition of $7.5 billion to meet the cash flow of the housing projects. I would like to ask about this $27 billion or $27 million. Please do not ask so many broad questions because we're talking about Capital Works Reserve Fund. Please be more focused in terms of your questioning, because otherwise the administration may not be able to answer all the questions. Each government official may be able to tackle detailed questions. Thank you. On your first question in relation to the Northern Metropolis, perhaps I invite the colleague from the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office to take that. For a second question, I will invite the Housing Bureau to answer that question. Thank you. Mr. Yin. Thank you, Chairman. There are some projects in the Northern Metropolis that are under construction, but there are a number of major transportation works that are under planning. As mentioned, we will have 4 major areas in 2024. We will promulgate the land use of the areas. So we haven't really completed all the study. The Development Bureau will, when we have a more detailed land use plan, roll out the estimates. Apart from making use of the Capital Works Reserve Fund, the government is open to other financing means, including public-private partnership and allowing landowners to participate in the development. As mentioned, we have a committee on the financing of major projects. They will consider different proposals. Thank you. Mr. Wong from the Housing Bureau, please. Thank you, Chairman. On this additional $27 million, we have 7 projects under that. Because the project is progressing quite quickly, so there is an increase in cash flow in 2023 to 24, and because of that, well, we saw that the construction workers are making use of more resources and the equipments are arriving rather quickly, so the construction progress was rather quick. That is why there is an increase in terms of cash flow. So an additional $27 million was needed in 2023 to 24. Next, Dr. Chao-Man Kwong. Thank you. Chairman, I have three questions. First, Head 801 on land acquisition. The estimates is about $34.2 billion that account to about 70% of the total estimates that involve Songshui Kyo Ha Chun. As the government has a deficit apart from acquisition of land, will the government consider land exchange to reduce the expenditure? That's my first question. I am a deputy president of a university, and I see that there is a fitting out work of university that amounts to about $620 million. So there is a drop of 13% compared 2024-25 to 2023-24. The government wants to turn Hong Kong into a regional education hub. When there is a drop in the allocation, how can you do that? On a Chung Kwan 0137 and 132 reclamation project, it involves about $37 million for site investigation and design. Well, because in the area 137 we have a desalination plant. Within 4 hectares, there will be different obnoxious facilities. Have you considered its impact to the supply of water? Thank you. For first question, I will invite the Lands Department to take that. For a second question, I will invite the UGC to answer that question. For the third question, perhaps the CEDD or the EPD will answer that question. Ms. Yuan, please. Thank you. We adopt different ways to produce land in Kutong North and Fanlin North development area. There is an enhanced new town development scheme to conduct land exchange. When there is suitable land available, we will make use of the land exchange approach to make land available. Thank you. Next, Mr. Leung. Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Chow, for your question. I would like to thank Dr. Chow for supporting our university renovation project. I would explain why there is a decrease in terms of allocation. In 2023, it was about $700 million. Now is $600 million. The allocation usually involves installation of safety facilities, construction, or rearrangement of space to increase study space. Among the $700 million, there is $1 million that is used for medical-related projects. So under that $100 million, there will be different funding for Hong Kong U, CU, and Poly U to improve their medical facilities. Under the financial secretary, we have a dedicated fund for that. but now it falls under head 708. The projects have been ongoing since 2018 to 19, but for the 600 million odd funding for UGC, it's been rather stable over the years. Thank you. Will Mr. Cheng supplement? Let me talk about Chenkon 0132. We have a refuse transfer station. As mentioned in Chenkon 0132, we have 6 refuse transfer stations, and they are about 1,000 km away from residents. 1,000, 1 km you mean? Yes, 1 km. So there will not be odor nuisance cost to residents. In terms of sewage, because this station is for refuse, so there will not be any leakage or impact cost to ODC. Anything to add from the WSD? We will conduct a EIA when we are carrying out the Chenkwan 0137 project. Upon completion of the desalination plant, we have some new projects, and I believe that environmental impact assessment will be done. When the desalination plant is in operation, we will continue to monitor the water quality. Thank you. Next, Mrs. Regina Ip. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask about new town and urban development. It involves pet parks, but there is one district that's missing. That's Big Wave Bay. Many people think that Big Wave Bay is a part of Stanley, but there are 1,000 residents who live there, and there's issues with flooding and roads renovation involved, and we need universal accessibility facilities there. Have you considered the situation at Big Wave Bay by including it in the block allocations for new town development, say for Dongjiang, new town extension? Discovery Bay needs facilities as well. It's a private development, so the facilities are rather expensive. So residents of Discovery Bay would like to use the public facilities in Dongjiang. What about rural area? What about the improvement works on piers there? Thank you. I would like to thank member for a question in terms of rural and Dongjiang issues. I would invite the CEDD to answer that. For the other questions, I will invite the HAB to answer that. Mr. Ma, please. Thank you. Let me first answer the question on Dongjiang New Town Extension. A member asked about the question on private development, Discovery Bay. We have actually reserved a series of leisure facilities there, and we will try to reinforce the ancillary facilities in Dongjiang so that more residents can enjoy those facilities. I would like to add one more thing. For Dongjiang New Town Extension, there are complaints from residents because the facilities are rather concentrated in some areas. Please consider the situation in Dongjiang in entirety, apart from Discovery Bay, because the private facilities are rather expensive.
Thank you. Of course, we will take into account the needs of residents in Dongjiang as well as rural areas. We will provide enhancements if necessary to meet the needs of residents. As for the Big Wave Bay issue, as I do not have the information at hand, I can provide information after the meeting in the form of a written reply. In fact, Chair, I can follow up with the CEDD representative after the meeting. Thank you. Is the speaker's microphone is not turned on? The speaker's microphone is not turned on. The speaker's microphone is not turned on. Please turn on microphone for Ms. Chung. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Ip. The minor works program for rural areas and new towns have taken into account the needs of residents. We will take note of the views of Mrs. Ip as well as district stakeholders when coming up with the works projects. Thank you. Next, Mr. Stanley, please. Well, I in principle support the block allocations, but I think the administration should make certain details clear for the public. For Head 705, the landslip prevention and mitigation program. Of course, this is a long-term project. In this year, as we have really bad weather conditions, it demonstrates the importance of the program. I can see that some projects started in 2019 and there are new items to be undertaken. I do understand that these projects are long-term projects, but the percentage change is relatively significant. So can you elaborate on the programs, as the programs have been implemented since 2019? Can you distinguish the components that are existing and those that are new? What are the new elements in particular? I think you really have to explain that to the public. Especially in Yutong Estate. This year, there was a landslide. No one expected it to happen. It was indeed a special case. I understand that you have to increase funding for such special cases, but is there an overlap of allocations? I also think you need to accord some sort of priority, especially with these new items. I hope that the administration can provide more information in that regard. In relation to Head 706, the repaving of road surfaces and the implementation or the installation of signs. Why do these projects have to be spread out over several financial years? Can they explain that? Thank you. Thank you, member, for your questions. For the first question, I'll let the CEDD colleague answer that. And for the second question, I'll have the representative of the Highways Department answer that. Mr. Ma, please. Thank you, Mr. For your questions. Under 705, the landslip prevention and mitigation program, as the member said, is a long-term project. Every year, we will reinforce 150 slopes. We will select 100 private slopes for research, and we will implement mitigation works as well. We have an established mechanism based on the size of the man-made or natural slope, the gradient, whether there are some important infrastructure, for example, hospitals or schools nearby, based on the circumstances. In fact, as announced in the policy address, we will conduct a systematic study on landslides. This is in response to extreme weather conditions. We want to collect more data to provide a better grading to accord priority of works for slopes. Based on the findings of the study, we will also revise the requirements for slope works and thus enhancing safety. I don't think the locations are mentioned in the paper. Can they provide more information on that? I think there are thousands of pages on such information. They did provide that in the other document, I believe. But will Mr. Ma provide more information on the timing of the funding? Thank you. For the new items, I do take note of the members' concerns. In fact, we no longer say program ABCDE. It's just for our internal use. I understand that members of the public may find it hard to understand. That's why the new items have the districts listed. In fact, in the relevant page, we have divided them into areas such as Hong Kong, Kowloon, East-West, and New Territories, East-West, so that people can better understand the scope or location of the works. Mr. If you want to know more about a particular item, you can follow up with the relevant department. And then we'll have Mr. From the Highways Department answer the next question. In relation to the repaving of roads, as roads are constantly used, there is wear and tear. For minor issues, we will just deal with them during routine maintenance. However, sometimes it would require major repaving. We will then propose these items under the Capital Works Reserve Fund. For these works, traffic arrangements may have to be implemented. Some works may have to be undertaken at night so as to reduce the impact caused to nearby residents. We will constantly have such works because the issues are constantly discovered. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lee Chun-kung, please. Thank you, Chair. We are spending $50 billion on the block allocations. As we have a tight budget, we really have to be prudent in our allocations. I can see that the other paper, that one that has 1,000 odd pages, I want to ask, what are the projects that are not as important? Can we not do them for now as we have tight budget? And for 3101GX, I understand that renovation works will be conducted in government buildings such as the Immigration Tower. The towers will soon be demolished. Is there really a need to conduct renovation works there? I can see that there are multiple works, for example, improvement works, renovation works, and toilet refurbish works that have to be conducted. But again, is that really necessary? I can see that $2 million will be spent on the registration of persons center. is it really necessary? Because from what I know, it would just be the paving of concrete. Is it really necessary? And does the amount have to be that high? Thank you. Monsieur, please. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your questions. With the works undertaken in government buildings, these facilities would in the end meet the needs of residents, and district councils have been consulted. I'll let the colleague from the Architectural Services Department give supplementary information on that. Is it Mr. Sin? Yes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, member, for the questions. For the 3 government buildings in Wenchai, regarding the works that have to be undertaken, as the member said, indeed the 3 buildings will be demolished in future. The government's policy is that the use of space should be maximized for the use of government premises, as the offices of the 3 buildings have to be relocated to other government buildings. For the floors that have been vacated, I understand that some other departments will use the space for short-term uses. That's why in the interim period, the space, I understand, will be used for short-term uses of other government departments. That's why renovation works have to be carried out. The renovation works will be relatively simple. There are just works that are of relatively minor nature. We will only do such works to match the needs of the future users, but we'll reuse some of the infrastructure, for example, air conditioners and electricity. Chair, I think this is not very cost effective. You will spend millions of dollars on these works, but the buildings will soon be demolished. And in fact, I understand that $7.6 million will be used to demolish a public toilet. Is it really necessary? A bulldozer would do the job. Why do you need $7.6 million? How did you derive this figure? Can the administration elaborate on that? And I think the administration should address my question about how necessary the works are. In fact, Mr. Lee, regarding the details of the works, can you obtain such information from the relevant department after a meeting? I think it is hard for the government officials to go into such detail today. I believe the relevant departments also have established mechanisms to derive the figures regarding whether indeed millions of dollars are needed for the demolition of the structures is really necessary. I think we can really talk about that after the meeting. In fact, I want to know, I think for the projects in the 1,000 odd pages, I do want to know more about the background information of these projects. I think the administration can provide a written reply after the meeting to supplement the relevant information. Thank you.
另外咧就有兩位。
There are 2 members who would like to speak for the second round, including Mr. Andrew Lam and Ms. Doreen Kong. I will allow for these 2 members to speak, and then the item will be concluded. If there are other members who would like to put questions, please press the button now. Thank you. Mr. Andrew Lam, 3 minutes, please. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask about 701, the computer system project. Instead of a question, I have a request about this new administrative computer systems. I have a simple request. Because the name of the project is computerization project. We need to develop digital infrastructures. I hope that you can put more details under the item because the term computerization is rather outdated. I believe that stock hardware will be involved. But in terms of software, I think that we really need to digitalize, and we have to explain that in the paper more clearly so that we understand which projects are actually promoting the digitalization of the society instead of just purchasing computer hardwares or program application. So I have this request. Hopefully the project can be detailed more clearly in the paper. Mrs. Xia? Thank you. For A00GX, that is new administrative computer system, yesterday we consulted the panel on information technology and broadcasting. I would like to thank Dr. Lam for his question, and I think that you have proposed a great suggestion. We will talk to the ITIB. They will provide you with a written reply. Thank you. Any follow-up? No? Ms. Doreen Kong, please. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask about principles, about 708 8001QH. In the new projects, I see a number of renovation projects or redevelopment projects, but a lot of primary schools in new territories told me that they have applied for funding, but they were not approved. For the 10 projects of school renovation, they are not located in new territories. Most of them are in Kwun Tong, Nam Tin, Sha Mo Ping. Only one of them is in Hong Kong Island. I understand that you don't make the calls, but what standards do you have or criteria do you have for school renovation projects? Because they are not evenly distributed. I would like to ask about a renovation work or fitting out work. For the office of the Eco Park, you need some substantial amount, that is $32 million for refurbishment. I would like to ask, what criteria do we have for refurbishment? I understand that you have different standards for different projects. What is the principle for it? Thank you for your question. For the first question, I will invite the Education Bureau to take that. For the second question, I will invite the RHSD to answer that. Who will take the question? Thank you, Chairman. About refurbishment of schools, we have a large-scale refurbishment mechanism. We will invite all subsidized schools to submit applications for renovation works. For the 10 projects that you see in the paper, that are the projects that will take up larger cost or higher cost in 2024-25. We actually have a total of 101 projects that will be taken forward, covering schools in Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, and New Territories. On top of A100QX, in subhead 100, we have other items for a school renovation or refurbishment work that cater to projects that amount to less than $20 or $2 million. The annex consists of thousands of pages, so you may read that online if you're interested. After reading the paper, you can talk to relevant departments if there is anything that is still unclear, because there are a number of projects involved. There are 2 other members who would like to put questions. We have already overrun. We have been discussing this item for over an hour. I will still allow these 2 members to speak. 3 minutes, please. If the government cannot give a full reply, I hope that they will provide a written reply instead. Mr. Edward Learn, please. I would like to ask about Annex 11 and 12. There is a public housing development project at Chaiwan North. I would also like to ask about Annex 12. That is the PRH estate near Chaiwan swimming pool. How many units will be constructed there? In these 2 projects, we understand that there will be a light public housing project in Chaiwan, and there will be a subsidized sale flat under private and public partnership project. I think that is a good thing for us to have more public housing units. But we don't see any improvement in terms of transport network in Chaiwan. Have you considered the pressure in terms of traffic flow, and will you introduce Sky Shuttle in Chaiwan? Because in the South Island line, there's a mention that we will introduce Sky Shuttle there. In Chaiwan, we have a great traffic pressure. There is no MTR connecting Susawan and Chaiwan. When we have more and more public housing units, there will be increased burden on the traffic network in Chaiwan. Do you have any mitigation measures? Or will you introduce Sky Shuttle? Perhaps I invite the Housing Bureau to take the question. Thank you, Mr. Ho. For Annex 11, first item, public housing development at Chaiwan North. This is a new project. So this is an infrastructure works project. As for the design, it's still in preliminary stage, so we don't have concrete figures for that. In enclosure 12, Chaiwan swimming pool, the project involves site formation and infrastructure works for the public housing development near Chaiwan swimming pool. As for the number of units that will be provided, as we're still in the design stage, so we don't have detailed information about that. As for the issue with Sky Shuttle, I don't have relevant figures or information yet. Thank you. As I've reminded members that we're talking about capital works, there are some minor works involved on the issues in terms of transport and detailed development. In the future, when the government asks for funding for these items, there will be time for members to put questions in these areas. We are here today to talk about capital works reserve fund. If you want to know more about site formation, for example, of course you can ask the government to provide you with relevant information. As for the future development of each and every project, as mentioned by the administration, that is Mr. Wong, they may not be able to provide you with that. Next, Ms. Lam So-wai. Thank you, Chairman. Here, I would like to ask about Head 705 on the consultancy project of the refuse collection transfer station in Cheng Kwan-O, because it amounts to about $29 million. I've said this before. I hope that the 4 obnoxious facilities in Chenkon O Area 132, Chenkon O residents can be taken into account, and the government should consider the livelihood impact. $29 million of funding allocation. Have you consulted the community in Chenkon O? I have to speak up for Chenkon O residents. The concrete factory will be moved to 132 from 137 from Lohas Park to Tiu King Lane. Why do you have to put so many obnoxious facilities in Chenkon O? We don't have any ideas about the 6 obnoxious facilities, and now you're asking me for funding of $29 million for the consultancy study? Thank you. Perhaps I invite the EPD to answer that, or the Housing Bureau. Who will take the question? EPD. Thank you. We are asking for funding for one of the 6 obnoxious facilities in Chenkon O for the consultancy study for the development of a refuse transfer station. As mentioned, the refuse transfer station is 1,000 kilometers away from residents, so there will not be much odor nuisance cost. Compared to the other 7 refuse transfer stations, that is the furthest away. And we will make use of the Chenkon-Lamtin Tunnel to deliver or transfer the refuse, and we will be conducting an environmental impact assessment to look at the actual impact. That's the consultancy study for one of the obnoxious facilities. Can you talk about the scope of the consultancy study? There were some questions put by Ms. Lam that may not be covered under the consultancy study. I think that the member were asking about the 6 obnoxious facilities. This is one of them under EPD. For the other 5 facilities, I will perhaps... What about your item? For the refuse transfer station, as mentioned, an environmental impact assessment will be conducted in covering water quality, visual impact, noise, nuisance, and so on. There will be public engagement exercise conducted. Upon completion or during the impact assessment is going on, a community can propose comments. So you will submit the environmental impact assessment report to us, correct? Under the environmental impact assessment ordinance, there is a public engagement process that is involved. On the environmental impact caused by the refuse transfer station, we will conduct an EIA, and after analyzing the impact caused to the residents can provide views to us in relation to the assessment, and we will take into account those comments, and in the end, the Director for Environmental Protection will consider if the report will be accepted. Thank you. Chairman, I have one thing to add. I was in Chenkon O just now. Some residents asked me if there will be a refuse collection station near the ocean or sea. Can the government tell the public about the operation of these facilities and its impact caused to residents and their livelihood? I hope that with this platform we can let people know about the issue and the impact. I believe that the administration will consult views of the public.
This is the end of the discussion of this item. I would like to thank the public officers who have attended the discussion of this item. I hope that Ms. Xia can follow up on the written replies to be provided to address members' questions. Also, I need to ask members Do you support the administration submitting this paper to the Public Works Subcommittee for consideration? There are no objections. All right. The next agenda item is supply of Dongjiang water. Will the public officers enter the conference room? Members who wish to ask questions, please press the request to speak button. Welcome, public officers in attendance. I'll first have the representatives give a PowerPoint presentation about the item. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. We have an inadequate local yield in Hong Kong due to the fluctuation in rainfall. That's why if we rely only on our water resources, we will not have enough water. We would like to thank the country's support of providing Dongjiang water to meet that shortage. In fact, Dongjiang water takes up 70 to 80% of the water supply of Hong Kong. As I said, the supply of Dongjiang water resolves the potential water shortage of Hong Kong. The current agreement will expire by the end of 2023. A new agreement is needed to be signed before the end of 2023 for the supply of Dongjiang water in the next 3 years. Starting early this year, the Development Bureau has been liaising with the relevant authorities in Guangdong Province on the new agreement. I'll let Mr. Yao of the WSD to brief members on the details of the new agreement. Thank you. We have adopted the package deal deductible sum approach. It is an approach adopted in 2021. The approach is applicable for 9 years from 2021 to 2029. The approach, as the name suggests, would have the actual water price take into account the actual water supply quantity. Every 3 years when we renew the agreement, we will make adjustments if necessary in relation to the water quantities, water quality, and water prices. We, for this agreement, have discussed the water quantity. We have taken reference of the climate in the past 100 odd years. We decided to retain the current annual ceiling of 820 million cubic meters MCM. This amount would ensure the 99% reliability of water supply in Hong Kong. The minimum imported quantity will be 615 MCM, and the average over the 9 years should be 700 MCM. Some members may be concerned about whether there will be any changes due to extreme weather conditions. In fact, we have great support from the country, so if necessary, we can import an ultimate amount of 1,100 MCM. With this mechanism in place, we have a stable supply of Hong Kong, so we really have to thank the Guangdong authorities for that. The water quality, it will continue to be type 2 water according to the environmental quality standards for surface waters. It is the highest national standard for surface water applicable for human consumption. For the approach that we're taking, For this approach, they will consider 3 factors when determining the water price. 1 is the change in price indices, 2, the change in exchange rate, and 3, the operation costs. We have derived the figure based on the figures of the last 3 years. In the past 3 years, the rate of change of consumer price indices in Guangdong and Hong Kong is plus 1.56%, and the rate of change for the exchange rate is 0.83%. The combined increment is 2.4%. In fact, there is an increase in operation costs according to the Guangdong authorities, but they have decided not to include the increment in the rate of increase. In fact, they have given us a discount, so to speak, and decrease of 0.701% from the combined increment. As for the ceiling water price in 2024, it is $5.1364 billion, 2025 $5.259 billion, and 2026 $5.38469 billion. If we are importing less than 820 MCM, we will have a unit cost for deduction for each cubic meter that is conserved. For 2024, 2025, 2026, the figures are as shown in the PowerPoint slide. As said, the existing agreement will expire by the end of this year. With the agreement of members, we will sign a new agreement before the expiry of the current agreement. We also want to promote the importance of Dongjiang water to Hong Kong and Guangdong's measures to safeguard supply and good quality of Dongjiang water. In fact, because in 2025 it will be the 60th anniversary of Dongjiang water supply to Hong Kong, we believe 2024 would be a good year for us to hold more publicity activities to provide more information of Dongjiang water for the public. This is it for my report. We are more than willing to listen to members' views. I can see that 6 members have pressed the request to speak button. Chen Yutming, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Mr. Ring Kong, Mr. Lim Chun Kern, Mr. Andrew Lam, Ms. Lam So Wai, and Dr. Wendy Hong has just pressed the request to speak button as well. Well, I think Mr. Michael Tian as well, so 8 members. 4 minutes per member, questions and answers included. I will ask for strict observance of the time limit because I think this item has to be ended by 10:30. Ms. Chen Yuming, please. Thank you. I do support the proposal, but I have 2 points to make in relation to the water supply quantity. There is an increasing use of water. The ultimate amount, as said, is 1,100 MCM. When there is more development in the northern metropolis, when there are high-end tech industries such as the chip industries that will move into the northern metropolis, has the administration taken into account the increased demand in fresh water when there are such developments? In relation to water quality, I understand that the alignment goes through Laurel Wood Reservoir, and 2 kilometers away from that is a landfill. Some worry that the operations of a landfill will pollute the water. I have communicated this concern to the relevant authorities before, and I understand that the authorities will take into account, but I hope this is now put on record. As for the water supply system, I understand that most of the pipes are above ground. Should there be future works to be undertaken, I hope that pipes will be laid underground instead to unleash more land. From what I know, there are pipe works going on near Mancom Tow boundary control point. I said during previous council meetings that they should put the pipes underground. Of course, we can't change that now. I hope that the administration can take my suggestion into consideration in future. Well, thank you, member, for your questions. We will discuss the agreement every 3 years. We expect for the next 3 years we will consume approximately 1 million cubic meters of water per year. In fact, as said in the annex of the paper, we have been promoting water conservation. As for the water quality, whether it's Dongjiang water or other water resources, the WSD has stringent monitoring of water quality, especially for treated water. The department has made sure that the water quality conforms to the standards for human consumption. I'll let the WSD supplement that in due course. As for the question about Northern Metropolis developments, we do take note of your views and some views of the members of the public in relation to the laying of pipes. We have to first consider the technical feasibility and the stability of water supply. However, we do take note of Ms. Chan's views. I'll let the director give supplementary information on the water quality. Thank you. I understand that the member was referring to the reservoir in Shenzhen, that is the Shenzhen reservoir. Upon the improvement works on Shaowan River, the operations nearby will not pollute the water supply. And we have 24-hour monitoring in the pumping station. We have published the relevant figures on our website as well. We have dedicated pipes for Dongjiang water supply. It will not be affected, I imagine, by the developments in the Northern Metropolis, but we will continue to monitor the situation. Thank you. Next, Dr. Lo Wai-Kok, please. Thank you, Chair. I have much to say in relation to this. In 1963, during the water rationing, my family had to conserve water, and in 1965, the Dongjiang Shenzhen water supply system has been constructed, and I do thank the country's support to supply Dongjiang water to Hong Kong. And in 2017, in April, the panel on development members visited the Dongjiang River Basin, including the Xinfengjiang Reservoir. We have also gone to the Dongyuan pumping station and other infrastructure, the aqueduct in Huizhou. I can see that the Guangdong side has been conducting much improvement work in the area, thus improving the water quality. I understand that there is a shortage in other Guangdong cities as well, but the authorities have really tried hard to maintain stable water supply to Hong Kong. In fact, the Dongjiang water supply makes up for 70 to 80% of the water supply in Hong Kong. I think that's why I support the proposal. The relevant parameters are also quite reasonable in relation to the water quality. As explained by the administration, it conforms to the highest national standard for surface water applicable for human consumption. Chair. Back in the 2017 visit, the ones from the opposition camp have also visited the infrastructure, and they couldn't help but admit that the high standards have been conformed with, but when they came back to Hong Kong, they said different things. They may be politically motivated to say such things. Why I'm saying this is that I want members of the public to understand the support of the country is very important to water supply. I think the agreement is quite reasonable as it is. That's why I support the proposal. During the last visit, we found that the Dongjiang Shenzhen water supply system has had multiple enhancements in relation to the alignment and the infrastructure. We have all along been liaising with the relevant colleagues in relation to the improvement works. If the department can provide more information on that, that will be ideal. Thank you.
Other Secretary, please. Thank you, Dr. Low, for supporting our proposal. Dr. Low mentioned that we conducted visits to Guangdong. We actually visit the facilities every year. We have a committee on water services or water works that will conduct visits to Guangdong every year. In the east of Guangdong, including Guangzhou, Dongjiang, they have tight demand or tight supply for water supplies. And they have a system that amounts to about tens of billions of dollars that will be completed very soon, so that in the coming 10 years, we will have enough water supply to Hong Kong. Thank you. Ms. Doreen Kong, thank you. I speak in support of the project or proposal. I have a few questions for the administration on water catchment facilities. The supply of Dongjiang water accounts for about 70 to 80% of our water supply. For the rest of the 10 to 20%, it depends on our local yield and catchment waters. We haven't much local yield in recent years, and we have established some catchment facilities. I would like to ask the administration, how do we enhance the catchment water volume so that we can make better use of water resources? And there's a topic on water conservation in the paper. We do have some programs on water conservation, but the use of water is still growing despite our population remaining stable. There is no decrease in terms of use of water. How can we do better in terms of water conservation? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. On the local yield, it actually depends on rainfall and the distribution of it. If the rainfall is too concentrated in certain district, the reservoir may not be able to collect those rainwater. That is why I think Dongjiang water is so important, because rainfall is very unstable. The difference between a dry season or dry year and rainy year can be very substantial. That is why Dongjiang water is very important. On water conservation, we have different programs. We encourage members of the public to make use of, say, water efficiency schemes, and we also diversify water sources. We have seawater desalination plant so that we can more resilient in terms of water supply and increase our sources of water. As for why there is a higher level of water consumption, it actually is because of the epidemic, because people wash their hands more often, and it also depends on the development of construction and tourism, because with more tourists there will be a higher water consumption. In 2021, where each person is using about 140 cubic meter approximately. That is not higher than the rest of the world in general. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lee Chung-kan. Thank you, Chairman. I've been hearing this word Dongjiang water for quite a number of years since I was a child, and I heard my parents talk about water rationing. That is why we have this supply of Dongjiang water. Water is an essential element to life. I'm grateful for the support of our country, especially when we have a water with the highest national quality. In terms of quality, and the pipelines they are of quality. I would like to ask a few questions. I know that you will lay new pipelines for Dongjiang water. When you're doing that, we have to install pumps and pressurizing facilities, for example. How can we save money in installation? Will you make use of technology? Say, when you're conducting site investigation, will you make use of drones? So that there will not be any infiltration or leakage. Seawater desalination. I would like to ask about the progress of the desalination plant. Singapore, they have a lot of such plants, but seawater is salty. Will we be able to filter out the odor? Thank you. Undersecretary, please. Thank you. I think you are talking about the management of pipelines so that there will not be a waste of water. We do have a water intelligent network. 1,900 have been completed, and hopefully we can finish everything by 2024. Together with the Polytechnic University, the WSD is trying to look into if we can have technology to monitor the leakage situation. Mr. Lee shared with us that there is new technology on the mainland. We will look into that. On seawater desalination plant, it's been completed and the water supply will start very soon. When it's in full operation, we expect that 5% of the water supply can come from the plant. The WSD will closely monitor the quality of the water and to make sure that it will be consumable. The quality will be comparable to that collected in the reservoir and that of the Dongjiang River or water. Thank you. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. After Mr. Lam has put the question, I will draw the line because we're short of time. Mr. Lam, please. Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Low for explaining about the background of Dongjiang River water, so I don't have to talk about that. I have a few questions because I read on the internet that well, some people said that Dongjiang water is a form of transaction. We don't have to be grateful. I feel deeply because in 1993, well, Xinfengjiang Reservoir, I helped with the construction. That's a strategic supporting facilities provided by the government to Hong Kong. It is not a form of transaction in any form. For provisional governments, I am very grateful to them. For the Heyuan municipal government, as mentioned by the Director of Water Supplies, the country has a number of strategic developmental proposals. Water supply will be even tighter in the future. Looking at the situation in Hong Kong, over 70% of water comes from Dongjiang. Rainwater will not be able to replace Dongjiang water. But I'm glad to see that we have a seawater desalination plant. We have 1,100 square km of seawater. We need to adopt technology to make use of rainwater and grey water. I would like to mention this. Can we still make use of the stormwater catchment areas for revival of rural areas and new development areas? These catchment areas may pose constraints on those developments. Dongjiang water will continue to prevail in terms of water supply in Hong Kong, but I think that we have to review our strategy. The most important point is that I do support the arrangement because it is nothing new. And I see that the adjustment is one that is very generous. I would like to thank the Guangdong Provincial Government for their support. Thank you. Undersecretary, please. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for pointing out the nature of Dongjiang water. That is our country supporting Hong Kong. With stable supply of Dongjiang water, we need to still diversify our sources of water to maintain our resilience. That is why we have a seawater desalination plant, and we also have to continue to collect local yield by rainfall. But will the catchment water area affect revival of, say, rural areas or development in the urban areas? There will be some challenges posed, but I don't think that it will affect redevelopment of villages very substantially. When we have some new ideas, we will continue to look into that. When you come across any challenges, please talk to us. Thank you. Next, Ms. Lam So Wai.
Thank you, Chair. Undersecretary. I understand that the source of Dongjiang water is from Heyuan. I visited the place before, and I think the scenery is very beautiful. I do thank the country for its support, and I support this proposal. In the paper, it says the leakage rate is 14%. It is behind some developed cities. Tokyo, it is 2%, and Singapore, it's also in the single digit, and Sydney, 8%. Is there any way that the administration can lower the leakage rate, and can you expedite the installation of the Water Intelligence Network, WIN? I believe the measures are interconnected. So you really have to expedite the relevant process. I understand that water meters are the traditional ones. Intelligent water meters have yet to make its way into households. That's why the WIN is mostly utilized in public housing estates. Does the administration have a timeline to promote the use of automatic water meters? Thank you. I do thank Ms. Lam for her support in relation to leakage rate. We hope that in 2025 the rest of the WIN can be installed so that there will be 2,400 monitoring points. The WSD is working with the Polytechnic University as well to conduct a study on that. Indeed, the leakage rate is at the moment approximately 14%. We hope to reduce it to 10% by 2030, as well whether we can reduce it to 0. We have to take into account Hong Kong's terrain. Hong Kong's water will come from uphill areas, and there's the water pressure issue. Due to this water pressure issue, there is bound to be leakage of pipes, but we will strive to reduce the leakage rate. Regarding intelligent water meters, starting from 2018, the Water Supplies Department has been promoting the use of such meters on a pilot basis in public housing estates to see if such technology is indeed feasible. Thank you. Next, Dr. Wendy Hong. I understand that apart from Dr. Wendy Hong, 3 members will want to speak. I will extend the meeting by not more than 15 minutes. Thank you. Dr. Wendy Hong, please. Starting from 1st of March 1965, there is the supply of Dongjiang water to Hong Kong. It has been over 60 years. It has been able to promote the development of Hong Kong with the stability of water supply. Hong Kong people do understand the support given by our country. In paragraph 18, it says that the desalination plant will start operating in the end of this year. It will at first provide 5% of the water supply of Hong Kong, and then it will provide 10%. I understand that the completion has been delayed by 2 years. When will the target of 10% be achieved then, with this delay in mind? It is also said in the paper that with desalination, the ratio of Dongjiang water supply will be reduced to 50%. When will that happen? With the desalination plant operating smoothly, will it be possible to replace the supply of Dongjiang water in due course if possible? As said by the member, the plant will start operating by the end of this year, and as said, it will provide approximately 5% of the water supply of Hong Kong. With phase 2 works completed, it will provide 10% of the water supply of Hong Kong. As said, the supply of Dongjiang water accounts for 70 to 80% of water supply to Hong Kong. In future, we will strive to decrease the ratio of the Dongjiang water supply. Every 3 years, we will renew the agreements and we'll discuss the water prices. And when we renew the agreement, we will forecast the figures of the next 3 years. For example, the demand to set the water quantity in the agreement. Thank you, Mr. Yao, please. Thank you, Dr. Hong. The Chengquan-O desalination plant works are ongoing. We expect that it can be commissioned by the end of this year. In fact, an announcement will soon be made. It's, as said, it will provide 5% of the water supply of Hong Kong. With phase 2 completed, it will provide 10%. In fact, the design stage of the phase 2 works has already commenced. Can the administration provide a completion time frame for phase 2 works? Well, we are still in the design stage. We have to take into consideration the type of technologies used in order to derive the completion time frame. I understand that with technological advancements, the cost should be lower, and you will take that into consideration when you design the phase 2 infrastructure, right? Correct. Thank you. Next, Mr. Michael Tian, please. I want to ask about the water prices in the new agreement. From the paper, every year there will be an increment of 2.39%. Part of it will relate to the annual rate of change in the exchange rate. Of course, we won't know what is going to happen in future, but the figure is projected from the current 3 years figures. This is, of course, subject to change. In relation to the increase in the price indices, it is said to be 1.56%. It is on the low side because in Hong Kong it is approximately 1.8%. How did they derive this figure? Is it because they have combined the inflation figures from both Guangdong and Hong Kong? It is said that operational cost has not been taken into consideration in the increase in water prices. Is it usual practice? Is it the case that in previous agreements that the operational costs will not be taken into consideration with the increase in water prices, or is this a special practice implemented for this new agreement? I am, of course, thankful for the relatively insignificant increase compared to the utility fees of electricity. Also, I want to ask about the deduction. How much deduction are we getting at the moment? Can you provide the figures for my reference? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tian, for your questions. The figure is indeed lower than the inflation rate of Hong Kong, as the figure is a combined figure considering the increase of price indices in Guangdong and Hong Kong, and it is an average figure over the 3 years. As for the operational costs, it has not been taken into consideration on this occasion. This is thanks to the Guangdong authorities who decided that we will only take into account the 2 other factors. Is this special for this agreement? In fact, as said, as we will undergo discussions every 3 years, and they have decided that for this agreement they will not take into account the factor of operational costs. we have a supply ceiling of 820 mcm. In 2022, we have used 816 mcm, and we have more or less similar figures in the past few years that we do not use up the supply ceiling figure. Well, if you have such accurate predictions, there is really not much deductions involved, right? I think in the next 3 years, each year we will have a $10 billion, that's 10 billion cubic meters of demand. In fact, if in case Dongjiang water is not adequate to supply the water demand of Hong Kong, we still have other water resources. Well, I understand that the demand is actually less, or do you have an increased figure of the forecast demand? Is it the case that you project the demand to be 1,000 mcm when you have a supply ceiling of 820 mcm? That is correct. The speaker's microphone is not turned on. Thank you. Mr. Edward Leung, please. I do support the proposal, but I think the administration should provide more clarifications, as there is much smearing. I can see that the annual supply ceiling is 820 mcm, and as provided by the administration, the demand in the past few years is more or less similar to the supply ceiling, so we are not wasting money. And I know that the water fees in Hong Kong is 1/10 of France and 1/4 of Japan's. We really have to convey to the public how well the country is treating us. I understand that it is said in the paper automatic meter readings will be applicable to new buildings. From what I know before, they would guess such figures because they can't get the right meter readings. That resulted in a fourfold figure of the actual consumption. In the mainland, they have already been using automatic meters. I think that will, in turn, if we use such automatic meters in Hong Kong, it will save costs. So does the administration have any plans to adopt more automatic meters? Thank you, member. Indeed, as said, the supply of Dongjiang water is a great support measure provided to us by the country. I will not comment on the figures provided by Mr. Edward Leung in relation to other countries, in relation to water prices. I'll just talk about this agreement. As said, the Guangdong authorities were very nice to not include the increase in operation costs in the consideration of the increase in water prices. Apart from water prices, I think the most important point is that we need to maintain a stable water supply. With a water shortage in other cities, the Guangdong authorities have been able to provide a stable supply to us. I know that the AMR system is being applied in public housing estates on a pilot basis to see if there are any difficulties faced if possible, we'll roll that out to other housing estates. Can you provide a timeline for the promotion of the AMR system in other estates?
而譬如講公營
For public developments, for Tai O PRH estates, we have installed some 200 automatic meters or smart meters there. We need to test the signal reception first. And with the technological advancement, the cost of the meters is going down. There are some meters that are very cost effective, and we have to look at the lifespan of the meter and the cost. Hopefully, we can finish the technical feasibility study next year, and we will have an estimate for members. Thank you. Next, Dr. Lee. Thank you, Chairman. I think that this agreement is suitable for us, and the conditions are rather generous. It's very rarely that we have no regard to cooperation cost when we discuss about new agreement. The country never adopts a business mindset when they are supplying Dongjiang water to us. They always consider the livelihood development of our citizens. It's hard for us to reimagine or imagine the appearance of water rationing again. There are 27 billion cubic meters of Dongjiang water that's been supplied to Hong Kong since 1965. The country guarantees water supply to Hong Kong, but with the development of the entire Greater Bay Area, other cities need to use Dongjiang water as well, and we need to consider this factor of fairness. When we have a greater demand for water, there's been a discussion of transferring water from west to the east rivers. Can you talk about the situation? How can we guarantee water supply to Hong Kong? Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Our country is concerned about Hong Kong. By providing supply of Dongjiang River, actually the water demand for other cities in the Greater Bay Area is high as well. That is why we promote water conservation and we built this seawater desalination plant. For transfer of water from west to east rivers, for such flexibility to be put in place, it will enhance the stability of water supply. Thank you for talking about the works. That's called the River Delta area water constructions. For Shenzhen and Huizhou, they have tight water supply. So in Xijiang, they will construct a water supply pipelines at about 113 km, connecting to the pumping station in Dongjiang, so that water from the west and the east can be interconnected. This month or early next year, there will be a connection of the west rivers and the east rivers. So in 2040, the water supply to the Pearl River Delta will be stabilized. Water supply is tight for all cities. That is why we have to reserve a water ceiling or minimum water supply. That is why we will be reserving 820 MCM from Dongjiang. That is so the Guangdong provincial government will be reserving 820 MCM for us. And when extreme circumstances happen, we can get 1,100 MCM. And we have to thank the Guangdong Provisional Government for that. I have a follow-up. Well, we are running short of time. After drawing the line, Mr. Stanley Ng said that he wanted to put questions. Perhaps I invite Mr. Ng to put his question within 3 minutes, and then I will see if you can follow up. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I support the new agreement of Dongjiang Water. The country has been supplying Dongjiang water to Hong Kong for nearly 60 years, and we have to tell good stories of that. Mr. Chen, the chairman of FTU, called the mayor of Guangdong Provisional Government, asking them to support Hong Kong in terms of water supply. So our union actually participated in the discussion. Within 1 year, the construction work was completed. The country has guaranteed stable and quality water supply by sacrificing development in the vicinity of Hong Kong. I think that this story has to be told to members of the public. I hope that the government can enhance that, because you just mentioned that in 2025 there will be a 60th anniversary of Dongjiang water supply. What measures do you have to tell good stories of Dongjiang water supply so that members of the public know more about the new agreement? A lot of people want quality water supply. Although some people said that they drink distilled water, more people actually want natural water or fresh water. That's my comment. Any response from the Undersecretary? Thank you. I will make a simple response. I agree with you. We have to tell good stories of Dongjiang water supply. Although the 60th anniversary will take place in 2025, but in 2024 we will start our publicity activities. When we're coming up with the content, we will take into account your suggestions. Thank you for that. Mr. Lee, I will give you 2 minutes for follow-up. Thank you, Chairman. To support Dongjiang water supply, the quality of it is very high. When river is coming from the West River, what is the mechanism for water quality control? How do we ensure the high quality of water when we have different sources of water? Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to say that to guarantee the quality of Dongjiang water, they have done much in terms of infrastructure. They will prevent sewage from entering the reservoir or the pipelines, and they have relocated a number of farmlands or polluting industries to guarantee or ensure the quality of Dongjiang waters. For water from West River, they have adopted measures to ensure that. Thank you. I will invite the director to talk about that. They have a number of water quality control measures for West Rivers. I will not go into detail, but the Pearl River Delta Water Resources Allocation Project, the West River will go to the East River, but the water supply mainly comes from Dongjiang for Hong Kong. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, government officials, for coming to the meeting. Now we move on to the next agenda item. Any other business? I would like to take this opportunity to let members know that this is the last meeting in the 2023 legislative session. We have organized 12 meetings. I would like to thank each and every member and the administration for actively participating in the meeting of the panel over the past year. Later, in the council meeting today, the panel will submit a report to the council on what we've done in 2023. I would like to thank members for your support to the panel, and I would also like to thank the Secretariat for their hard work. Here, I would like to thank you once again. There being no other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.